Good evening. Welcome to this edition of The Message live from the Watering Hole. I am your host, Messenger Ryan L. King, presiding messenger of the Lafayette Center of the Society of Knowledge. This show is produced and prepared by the Society of Knowledge, which is an interdenominational, religious, spiritual organization. Our members come from various different backgrounds, different creeds, different beliefs, different, all of that. Everything is diverse within the Society of Knowledge. But there is one thing, one understanding that we do share in common, and that is the belief or the understanding, the awareness that there is a being that is supreme to all things, that is almighty. So although we may have come to know or call that being by different names, it is all an understanding that there is one being that is supreme. Some people call him Allah, some people call him Buddha, Jesus, or what have you. But it is all one being. God is Almighty. Now, personally, I've come to understand and know that being as Tweet, that which is all things, and I appreciate y'all's patience here. I have a 2.5 year old. All right, all right. That's let's see here. Yeah, that's Master King. Very full of energy, full of life. I appreciate his presence here, his energy, and I am grateful to all things. And we are live this evening again, of course, December the 6th, 2022. And the topic of discussion tonight: shape your mind to die, a constant state of becoming. Shape your mind to die. What does that mean? What could that quite possibly mean? Now I have to let y'all know up front. That's hold up, master. Hold up. Hold up. All right. Hold up a second, everybody. I appreciate y'all's patience here. Great on it. All right. I believe we got him situated now. But again, as I was saying, I'm just an ordinary individual. So this excuse me, this topic tonight, again, shape your mind to die, conscious state of becoming. I see we have a few people in the studio. I'm gonna go ahead on and let them in the studio here. Let's see here. All right. We have Messenger, presiding messenger, the Nodis King there of the New Orleans Center. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
All right. Great to have you joining with us tonight. And your sound and video is coming through clear. Thank you
Good.
for joining. Yes,
Good.
sir. Now let's see who else we have there. All right. We'll let them in just a second. But like I was saying, I'm just an ordinary individual. Just like any other ordinary individual. I have a perspective on things, and so that's what this show is really about. Of course, in a society, we only have one purpose, and that one purpose is, to deliver the message that God is Almighty. So once that message has been delivered, we can then uh, have a conversation about it. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? And then apply that to different circumstances and different subject matters. For instance, this subject matter, this topic tonight, shape your mind to die. What does that mean, to you? When you just hear that right off the top, what does that mean to you? And we'll get right into that in just a second. And I see we have Isis is in the building. Sister Isis, Queen over there. How we doing? Good, good to have you with us. I don't think I could hear your mic coming through. Yeah,
We are doing well. I'm thankful.
beautiful. It's great. All right. Let's see here. And before we get into the discussion tonight, let's see here. We'll go ahead on and if you were tuned in from the beginning, you may have saw something on the screen there. It was an acknowledgement. I'm gonna put that back up on the screen, and that is again, the acknowledgement that within the society, like I mentioned, our members come from different various backgrounds and beliefs, but we hold one thing in common, and that is an understanding that there is a being higher, supreme than us, in all things. And this acknowledgement just encapsulates that message. I'm gonna go ahead on and read that, just so that if you're watching this, or if you have it playing and you're not necessarily paying attention to the screen, right, you'll still be able to get that message. Go ahead on. I know that everything that ever was, is now, or ever will be, is a piece of God. I know that everything that ever was, is now, or ever will be, was made by God. I know that everything that ever happened, is happening right now, or ever will happen, is made to happen by God. I know that God has a master plan for all time and all creation. I know that God is Almighty. And again, you hear that term, God, right? But again, you may have come to understand that energy, that essence, by some other name. You may call it Allah, you may call it Buddha. Personally, I've come to understand that, or recognize, or come to call that energy by the expression Twi'at, that which is all things. All right. That's it. And again, like I said, I'm no expert, so this is an opinion, right? At the end of the day, God is Almighty, and we'll believe what we want to believe, or what God ordains us to believe, if that's a better way of putting that, a more palatable way, right? We believe as God ordains us to believe. And so I have a few thoughts prepared, but again, I'd like to hear from our guests this evening that have, dedicated some time to come in and vibe and build with us this evening. Let's see here. If the floor is open, if anybody would uh, would like to share, some of their thoughts when you first hear that expression, shape your mind to die. Right? What comes to mind? What would you what would you right off the top? What would you say that means to yourself? Yes, sir.
Okay, well, if the floor is open, I
The
guess I
floor
can
is open.
share a little understanding that I have, and that little understanding that I have is number one. I don't believe in coincidences. I know that there is no such thing as coincidences. That everything happens for a reason. That things are all working together according to a master plan. And this
Yes,
topic,
sir.
this evening, and that topic as far as prepare your mind to die. Uh, First of all, that uh, audio piece that you posted a few days ago,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that was a very interesting piece. And, I got the feeling when I first heard it that it was something that came out of the 70s. Just the funk that it had. And then I looked at some of the comments, some of the liner notes, and I know it did come out of, I don't know, the 60s or 70s, somewhere around that period. Uh, but I enjoyed that music, and just letting you know that. Yeah, but again, as I was saying earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that I know that there's no such thing as coincidence, and that's my opinion. That's my knowledge.
Right.
And this topic about prepare your mind to die, that my understanding of it is that the artist that created that came up with those lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
he was not speaking about a carnal death.
Hmm.
And what I got out of it and out of the lyrics was this a death of individuality. And that right there, even though that might have come out in the 60s or 70s, and I don't know what kind of understanding you have out of that prepare your mind to die. I'm sure I'm going to hear it later on. But you referenced this song that came out of, and when was that?
That was 1972 was the release of that album.
Okay.
That's
So
right.
1970,
Leon Thomas.
all
Shape Your
right.
Mind
So
to Die is the record.
shape your mind to die. So that's 1972, and it's as relevant today as it was in 1972. But I'm just gonna share something with you that a couple of weeks ago, we were discussing some scriptures, and these scriptures came out of the book of John, chapter 3. And even though shape your mind to die might seem to be a revolutionary idea, this is an idea, a sentiment that was expressed more than 2,000 years ago.
Hmm.
And when we read in the book of John in chapter 3, and particularly in verse 3, where according to Christian theology, Jesus Christ said, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." So born
That's right.
again, and then the guy Nicodemus asked him, "Well, what you talking about? How can an old man crawl back into his mother's womb?" And the
Mm-hmm.
response to that, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto thee, ye must be born again.
That's
So,
right.
so shaping your mind to die, and it's it's been my experience that it's some folks whose minds have been shaped to die, and then there's some folks whose minds have not. There's some folks that have not really walked into their spirit being, and that was their destiny not to do that. But there are some whose destiny, whose fate, who were created to walk in that spiritual world. And when you, as I said earlier, the loss of individuality, that when you begin to walk in that spirit world, even an identity of being an individual spirit, even that
Mm-hmm.
leaves, and you come to the consciousness, and I'll use that word, the consciousness of there being one spirit, and you come to that plane that I think you like to use the term the Tuyat, that
Yes,
which is
sir.
all things. And even that, and I talk about the Bible and Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago expressing that concept. But when we see in some Indian religions and spirituality that predated Christianity, we see that same concept, and I think some folks call it nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to that level, whereas all these things that distinguish us, that helps us identify ourselves as individuals, that all that melts away, and we really come back to our essence that we never really leave, but that oneness, that we're all is only one being,
Righteous.
one
Righteous.
being.
That's right. So as you come into, I've heard it said many a time, and I recall you mentioning this to me. Ain't nobody on the island. If you want to be on the island by yourself, then you can have things, you can do things how you want to. But when you come into community with other persons, you have to give up, a bit of that individuality so that you can be able to harmonize, with everybody else around you. So that's that being that recognizing, that individuality, in and of itself is an illusion on many levels. But then at the highest level, if you will, all there is one. So
Mm,
it's only the individual, that
mm,
individual being, that oneness, for lack of a better term, Tuyat, that which is all things.
that right.
We've been mere instrumentalities, of that being. And you mentioned about in John chapter 3 when Jesus the Christ was speaking, about let's see, about being born again, things like that. That same sentiment is also carried through to the book of Romans. So when after the time Jesus Christ was on earth or what have you, um, not to get into all of that, whether or not he was or wasn't,
Mm,
after it was ascribed to him being on the earth, then that same sentiment is carried forward in the book of Romans, where I believe Paul is speaking to, in his letters or what have you, speaking to these persons outside of the Jews, um, and he tell them, that be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by renewing of your mind, that ye may
mm,
prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
mm,
Uh, so that same thing, being able to transform yourself by changing your mind, right? Allowing old ways of thinking or present ways of thinking to die off or to subside, and to bring to the forefront other ways or new ways of thinking, which would in turn materialize into ways of being. So yeah, that's that. And again, the mind is a powerful thing. The
mm.
mind is a powerful thing, and I'm not too. I wasn't around in the '70s, right? So I don't know what the full extent of how things were, from a personal level. But from what I understand, it was a time of coming togetherness, if you will, within certain communities. And so that message of shaping your mind to die and kind of giving up that individuality and seeing yourself as bigger than just yourself. And this is an appreciation that I got from the song "Shape Your Mind to Die" by Leon Thomas. That he was appealing to persons to forego that individual, I need it right now because I want it type of mentality, to focus more on or shifting more towards the community needs this, and so let's operate this way. you know That's interesting.
Mm.
Let's see. All right, let me see. Who's else? Let's see. Isis, you're back in the building with us. You got any thoughts on this shaping your mind to die? You're muted. You know what I mean?
I
I like
would say, I would say I had two perspectives.
that.
The first perspective that I had was if you have a mindset to die as far as like physically, like you're physically gonna die, then I think it would make you like be more compassionate and understanding and loving and things like that because why not? You know, I don't know. If you're gonna die, like it's better to be the best, to put out the best energy that you can. And the other perspective that I had was shaping your mind to die as yourself. Like if you know that this version of yourself is only going to be, you're going to continue to evolve into another version of yourself, then you accept yourself as you are because you know that this is only for this moment, you know, if that makes sense.
All right, all right. You know, accepting that there is more to life.
Right. That
Uh
this moment is going to die and then another moment is going to
huh. So,
be born and then it's continuous.
all right. I like that. You know, a constant state of becoming. You know, and that's
Right.
the subtext, the subtitle, if you will, of this broadcast. You know, shaping your mind to die, a constant state of becoming. You know, so at every moment, you know, a million of your cells in your physical body, it dies, and then you have brand new cells. You know, and they say that the phraseology or the common notion is that you are what you eat, right? So every moment, you know, you're eating things, you're transforming your body. You know, at every moment, you know, those cells, those fruit cells go into your body, incorporate with your cells. Some of your old cells die out, and some new cells are replaced. You know, so now you're orange. You know, you're more orange today than you were yesterday. You might have been more apple, or more pear, more peach. You know, but it's a constant state of becoming and renewing the body, renewing the self, the person. You know, and you mentioned about being, you know, compassion and the statement, the question, how you posed it. You know, what if, you know, if you knew you were gonna die, you know, how would you operate? And that's a question that I had to pose to everybody that's listening. You know, what type of life would you live if you knew you were gonna die? What would your life look like? You know, would that cause you to go out on a rampage? You know, would that cause you to just, you know, expend all the energy that you have? Let's say you have $1 million in the bank. Would that cause you, and especially if you knew when you were gonna die, so you're gonna die tomorrow, would you go out, you know, and spend all your money on booze or spend all your money on, you know, a whole bunch of junk food? You know, what would it look like? Right? What would you do if you knew? What type of life would you live if you knew you were gonna die? I mean, I guess the reality of it is, well, like they said, there's nothing promised to you in this world or in this life but death and taxes. You know, so that's one of those things that's coming for everybody. You know, death. You know, so what is death? You know, what does it mean to die? You know, so and exploring this topic, you know, kind of brought me down that rabbit hole, just getting into all of that. Right. So when you break it down, and before I get to, I'll do that at the end, the announcements and things. Um, I'll do that at the end while we're in the flow of things. Go ahead on and get into it. So shape your mind or die, right? What does it mean to shape? I'm gonna go ahead on and pull that back up. I wish I could share my screen here, but it's all good. Let's see. All right. Right. What does it mean to shape? Right. To give definite form, to organize, to adjust, to adopt, to direct. Yeah. And what is the mind? What is the mind? There's many definitions. All these terms, there's many definitions of them, right? So looking at the context of it, is kind of was directing this, and even the context of to shape your mind to die. Again, this is perspective, right? There are many different perspectives that can be had just looking at these three terms, the shape. What does it mean to shape? The mind. What is the mind? To die. What does it mean to die, right? We're getting into it, the mind, your intellect. And I heard Master Donata say this earlier about consciousness. Right? What is that? So the mind, intellect, or understanding. Right? Let me see here. That agent, that part of your being that processes, reasons, thinks, feels, wills, perceives, judges, etc. And these definitions that I'm going through right now, coming from dictionary.com. So everybody, you can go ahead on and look it up for yourself, to see what these words mean, right? And what does it mean to die? And this is what was interesting to me, just looking up this definition. And before I get to that, going back to the mind, it was an interesting definition in that it directed me to this concept of a mortal mind as opposed to a divine mind. So a divine mind, according to Christian Science, if you're familiar with that branch of understanding, Christian Science, which is let's see here, is a set of beliefs and practices associated with the members of the Church of Christ, scientists, right? If you ever heard of people speaking about Christian scientists or Christian Science, that's what this branch of understanding, this branch of theology is all about. And what they speak of as the divine mind, it's God, the incorporeal source of life, substance, and intelligence, which is in opposition, or not necessarily in opposition, but comparative to the mortal mind. The mortal mind being the illusion that mind and life arise from matter and are subject to death. Yeah. So that was interesting, just coming across that definition, and exploring this concept, this thing about a mortal mind. They say it's commonly understood that we as human beings, if you would ascribe to that label, are mortal beings, which means that we are, quote, subject to death. Right? And so the mortal mind is an illusion. It was just really interesting that mind and life are subject to death. So now, if it's an illusion, could you be otherwise illusion to have an appreciation of life, mind, and life that's not subject to death? Right? Is it possible to, quote, live forever? In some circles, they speak about life or being able, or eternal life, as the faculty of remembering. So if you can remember in a life that you had prior to this present life, could it be said that you lived for hundreds of years? Reincarnation, if you can, and that's some Eastern practices, they have an understanding of that reincarnation. I think it's Hinduism, Buddhism. Those are those religious or those spiritual movements. They have that understanding of reincarnation. So if I could remember when 3 lifetimes ago, would that mean that I've lived a consecutive life of, let's say, 600 years? Or does it still break down to say I've lived 3 or 4 separate lives, right? Or are you really an eternal being? But going on, moving forward, the definition of death, which is also interesting because it could be looked at in 2 different ways, right? One is to cease to live, right? To lose force, strength, or active quality, cease to function, to be no longer, well, and then it starts to transition into something else, some other type of definition, right? And this one was most interesting to me and relative to this topic of discussion. To be no longer subject, right? And so if you have a mindset, um, if you have a mindset that life is finite, then you become subject to this idea of death. You know, it could be easily lorded over you, this concept of debt, this idea of debt. And lo and behold, you know, and again, it's open discussion. Anybody could jump in at any time, right? But many organizations are predicated upon this concept of debt. You know, so and many churches around the world, you know, at least, you know, I haven't been, you know, everywhere around the world. I've been a couple of places, but this concept of living living accordingly in order that when you die, right, you won't be punished for eternity. Right? It causes people to be afraid of death. You know, I don't want to die. I want to be able to live, but I don't want to die because how I'm living is may not be in accordance to how I quote should live. Right? And so this whole concept of death, it, you know, causes people to live in fear of dying. So now if you're no longer subject to that fear of dying, what type of life could you live? Right? If I, you know, like I said, it's a constant state of becoming, and everything is kind of, you know, transitory, if you will, impermanent. The only thing that's permanent is that which is all things. We've been mere vessels, mere instrumentalities in order to accomplish the will of that being that is Almighty. And then moving further, this concept of dying or death, right? Let's see here. Like somebody might have just joined in. But this concept of dying or to die meaning to desire or want keenly or greatly, right? So now that kind of puts a whole nother spin on this phraseology of shaping your mind to die, right? And so two things, let me see here, two things that kind of ran across my mind, and it's kind of the premise of this idea of shaping your mind to die for me. And I see before I get to that, I see we have a couple of more people that then joined us. And I'd like to add y'all to the stream if that's all right with y'all. A couple more people that entered into the studio. See Brother Prince there. Brother Prince there. How we doing, Sid?
I'm doing great. How y'all doing?
Doing well, man. Thank you for joining us in the studio this evening. It's
Yes,
a
sir.
pleasure. It's a pleasure. You know, we
Yes,
with the subject matter tonight, shaping your mind to die. You know, if you have look like you might be in a store or something like that, so I ain't gonna hold you up. But if you had any thoughts you'd like to share on that concept, just you know, hearing it, you know, first impression, you know, what comes to mind?
shaping your mind to die. Sacrifice.
Hmm,
That's the word that come to mind. Sacrifice.
sacrifice.
Yeah, because
That
nothing wants to die. You know what I'm saying? So this is something that you have to will to do. You have to choose to do.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's an interesting point that you brought up there. You know, just looking at the season that we in America and around the globe, um, the season of Christmas, right? And a lot of people will tell you, you know, remember what the reason for the season is, right? Christmas
Right.
is about remembering Christ and reflecting upon, you know, how this guy came and did all of that. But what's the backstory to that? When you talk about sacrifice, you know, why was that character infleshed in the first place, right? To be a sacrifice for the people of the world, you know. So God, so God, that being that created Christ, purpose put him with purpose to come to die, to sacrifice himself. So God shaped his mind to die, and then Christ had to shape his mind to die. It's just interesting, and I appreciate that commentary. Appreciate that perspective,
Yes, sir.
sacrifice. All right. Let's see. I see you have your back eye. Messenger Donatus. See, we have Messenger Tate now on. Then join us in the studio. If you're with us, if you have anything that you like to share with the people this evening on this subject matter here, shaping your mind to die. What comes to mind on first impression? How
First
we doing
impression.
tonight?
Peace, peace. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Coming through loud and clear.
First impression for me. When I think die, I do a lot of translating. For me, death is an illusion. You know what I mean? I don't see death as anything other than a transition that's misunderstood. So I think shaping the mind to die is a matter of understanding transitions and reformation, understanding that oftentimes what looks like the end is actually the beginning of something else. You know, there's a cipher that I acknowledge. Um, when we came into this realm through so-called birth,
Hmm.
we only showed our existence for people outside the womb, but we actually existed within the womb. We had life at that point. So just because it becomes someone else's day one to detect you doesn't mean that that's your day one.
Hmm.
Same thing when it comes down to the transition, so-called death. So I think about transition. I think about uh, being able to conceptualize and prepare yourself for transitions. And with that, I yield.
Powerful, powerful. Appreciate that. And it's one of the main things was like I was speaking on earlier. This concept of moving from one thing or one state of consciousness to the next state of consciousness, you know, a constant state of becoming,
Test 1, 2.
you know. Yes, sir. You're here loud and clear. I would see you was going in and out for a second, but you're back with us. Yeah. That whole concept of understanding and recognizing the impermanence of this reality. That the idea that within that which is all things, things are constantly being shaken up and moved around. Energy is a current, so it's constantly moving. It's constantly moving. So I appreciate that input, that messenger take. Now I appreciate that. Yes, sir. And so looking at that, and on that note, I like to share this within this statement of understanding. Some of you may have seen this from the last broadcast. I like to call your attention, and so it's two things to this. I like to read the first and the last paragraph. Yeah. And the first paragraph is with respect to knowing and understanding or having an idea of what we are or what we may be, and not to, put this on anybody else. So I'll take the brunt of this myself on what I am. Yeah. I am that which is all things made manifest in the flesh. I know that I, being manifest in the flesh, am an instrumentality of that which is all things, inseparable from that which is all things. That which is all things itself. All is in the mind of that which is all things. All is the mind of that which is all things, working through me and all its instrumentalities as perceptions of itself to produce the illusion that I in the flesh perceive as reality. Right? So that right there would be a reflection of what I perceive as myself. And so with considering this concept of death and dying and shaping your mind and all this other type of thing, call your attention to the last paragraph where it says that I know that nothing ever actually dies. Death does not exist within that which is all things. all things being within that which is all things, component parts thereof are only transformed from one manifestation to some other manifestation, even if in the same previous form within that which is all things. And that speaks to that idea of reincarnation. You know, in some circles they speak about, you know, you have to come back into this form of being a human if you don't do right your last life. And then you gotta, you know, and then in this life you gotta correct some things, and then in the next life you correct some things, and then in the next life you correct some things until everything is finally corrected, and then you can move on to some other manifestation, right? You might become a frog or something like that. I don't know. You might be able to, you know, be a tree and just relax and just sway with the breeze. But just speaking to that concept of dying, right? I know that when my perceived consciousness, that illusion that Brother Master Tenab was just speaking on, that illusion of being, of presence, once that consciousness is no longer in this form, it just transcends this current physical manifestation of that which is all things and recycled back into the abyss of that which is all things and regenerated as some other manifestation thereof. Right? That's just to say again, you know, that which is all things is what it is. You know, we as instrumentalities, we experiencing this life, but we only experiencing this life as an agent of that which is all things, as an instrumentality, existing within the mind of that which is all things, as the mind of that which is all things. And it can sound kind of circle like, but at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, on all that? What y'all got? All right, like they say, hearing none, I proceed. All right. So, you know, just a couple of points, and now this is what I was about to speak to earlier in terms of the definitions. I was going through those definitions. So it's a couple of statements that came to mind, and which are really the thrust of this conversation, you know, in terms of shaping one's mind to die. In other words, it is to direct one's understanding to be no longer subject, right? So that one becomes the acting agent. You know, you become the Lord over your life. You're no longer subject to this instrument because these bodies are only instruments, right? We use these bodies to get around on this planet through this physical reality, through this physical space. We use these bodies to we use these bodies, you know, to move around. You know, so as the ability to see yourself as something beyond this body, so that you're no longer subject to it. You become master of this body, of this vessel. You know, like it's like your vehicle, right? You direct your vehicle where you want your vehicle to go. You know, unless your vehicle has a broken steering wheel, if you want it to go straight, it's gonna go straight. Now, if you have a messed up steering column or something like that, might want to go straight, but it might go to the left a little bit. But then you still have the power to bring it back straight. You know, go get an alignment or something like that. You know, fix your vehicle. You know, same thing with these bodies. You know, so it's a matter of directing one's understanding to be no longer subject. Right. So and again, you know, a lot of people are controlled by fear of death, fear of dying. And so knowing that as if I was some nefarious type of person, that's all I would have to do is tell you you're gonna die. That's one of the common causes of or one of the common tools used by robbers. You know, they come with a gun. They say, "Give me everything you got, or I'm gonna kill you." Right? And what you're gonna do? You don't want to die. You're afraid of death, so you give them what you got. And even if you're not afraid of death, you just want to live because you feel your presence is more valuable in the flesh as opposed to not being in the flesh, right? And so you give them what you got, and also, in our dealing with war and what have you, when some countries are conquered, right? For instance, when the conquistadors came over to these shores of what's commonly known to today as America, they would raid a village, line everybody up, and tell them convert or die. You know, either you become one of us or we kill you. Get down or lay down, right? And a lot of people, not afraid of death, they would convert in a moment, in that instant, they would convert. They would become subject to that new power, that new authority. It's a sad thing, but hey, who wants to die, right? So, and then the other the other way of looking at shape your mind to die and understanding that is to organize one's intellect to realize the desires of one's heart, the heart being one's subconscious mind. The subconscious mind in that context, right, in terms of realizing the desire, right, realizing that purpose, that God or that which is all things, that spark of life that was put into you, that was placed onto you, within you, allowing your energy, allowing your intellect to be used towards realizing and manifesting within this physical plane that seed that was placed upon you, that was placed within you, right? From that which created you. Whatever you think created you, gave you life, what did it inspire you? What are you being inspired to do? Because again, death or to die also means, right, to desire or want keenly or gravely, right? So go after, this is willing to die for, right? What are you willing to die for? That's a question that you got to ask yourself. What are you willing to die for? Yeah. What is it? What is it you're willing to go after with all your energy, with all your might? What do you have? What are you inspired to do that's so great? Go after it. Set your mind, shape your intellect, organize your understanding towards achieving that objective, to achieving that desire. Those are two things in terms of shaping your mind to die. Yeah, that was kind of downloaded within me, and that I just wanted to share with you all tonight. The reason for this broadcast, you know, the reason for this broadcast beyond um, delivering that message that God is Almighty. Right? Because at the end of the day, whether your mind is shaped, however your mind is shaped, is only shaped that way because that's how it was ordained by God. That which is all things, how it organized your beingness. So now whether your mind is shaped to die or not, that's between you and whatever created you, between you and God. Yeah, yeah. So let me see any other thoughts. Let's see here. Any other thoughts before we close out here? We'll go ahead on and just share a couple of announcements. Let's see. All right, Brother T. Nah, message how we doing? Any final closing thoughts for us tonight?
A gentleman recently came to me, and he's going through a lot. And he is self-medicating in the form of alcoholism. And he called me about 3 in the morning with thoughts of suicide.
Hmm.
So he has shaped his mind to die. He wanted to kill himself. And so, and I told him, he's halfway right. You're halfway right. Part of you needs to die, but it's not your physical body.
Mm.
It's the ideas and the attachments and the toxicity, the toxic people and the routines that he attaches himself to. That part of him needs to die. Because when I was self-destructive early on in my life, that aspect of me had to die in order for me to envision a different reality. And I realized I was a master gardener of my thoughts and of my fate. And so there's degrees to death and there's different ways to approach how it looks. But I challenged him to kill himself, but not physically, to let a certain part of him die. I
Wow.
stopped with that. I'm a year.
Powerful. That was a great prescription, for any of you out there that's listening that may think that the only way out is a physical cessation of life, right? But the reality of it is, that you just heard expressed, and as we mentioned earlier in the show, Jesus the Christ mentioned it, Paul mentioned it, be ye transformed by renewing of your mind, right? Choose, you have the power, the authority to choose and to think differently. Right? You have that is your birthright. A lot of people speak about birthrights, and then you got, this land is yours, whatever. But the bottom line of it, the long and the short of it, your birthright is in your power to think. Think what you want to think. Right? Think how you want to think. That's where your power comes in. That's where your power lies. You can transform yourself from day to day. What I know, a lot of y'all might watch movies and things like that. You see this character in this movie, this person. Then you flip the channel, you see that same person, but they playing a whole different character. They present themselves. You have that power, that authority, to be who you see yourself as. Right? It was on all things elevation on yesterday, and the subject matter, the topic of discussion was about labels. What label do you ascribe to? Right. So today you might ascribe to the label of a Muslim, but when information is presented to you, right? New information is presented to you. How does that change your reality? The reality of it is you have the power, the authority to change your mind. Right? Yesterday you was a Muslim, today you're a Christian, tomorrow you agnostic, the day after that you're Buddhist, right? Who's gonna tell you you're wrong? Right? And I mean that's the long and the short of it. It's your authority, it's your life. Right? Direct it how you please. Shape your mind to die. Go after what you're going after. Wholeheartedly, go after it. It's yours already. It's like it was mentioned about seeds earlier. Right? You put a seed in the ground, put an acorn seed in the ground. What if that acorn seed don't want to die? Will you ever see an oak tree in its place? Will you ever be comforted by the shade of the leaves or the branches? Yeah. Will you ever be able to use the wood from that tree, the branches, to heat the environment, to set a fire, to cook some food, to build a house? Right? But if that acorn does decide that it would like to die, or that it agrees that it would like to die to transform, then you have the oak tree. So what's that acorn inside of you? Right? What's that seed that's been planted inside of yourself that just wants to flower, that wants to bloom? Yeah. Here go an oak tree right here. Big old oak tree right there. Yeah. But with that, we're great on it, and we'll go ahead on and close this out. I appreciate y'all's attention, appreciate y'all's energy, appreciate the time invested into making this, into exploring this topic, this subject matter on shaping your mind to die, a constant state of becoming, right? And I have just a few announcements to share. Let's see here. Again, this message is produced, this show is produced by the Society of Knowledge Incorporated. And you can visit our main website, www.godisalmighty.org. And there you'll be able to find links to the various shows, previous broadcasts of the message coming out of New Orleans, the message coming out of Lafayette, the message coming out of North Carolina, Opelousas, Crowley, and into that, let's see here. The New Orleans Society, the New Orleans Center has a fellowship celebration every Sunday at 10 a.m. on the second and fourth Sundays. You can catch them live in person. So notice this message up here. It says about Sunday, November 27th, but the next live in-person fellowship will be this upcoming Sunday, December the 11th, and that'll be at 2411 Treasure Street in the city of New Orleans at Imani Temple number 28. Again, 2411 Treasure Street, and that'll be at 10 a.m. And you could also catch them on the first and third Sundays live via Zoom, via Facebook. Let's see here. Again, we have centers all across the United States right now. We're developing some in other parts of the world. And we have the North Carolina Center, and that's presided over by Messenger Taynab L. You just heard him on the screen a little while ago. Let's see here. We also have the Opelousas Center of the Society of Knowledge, presided over by Messenger Corey Levy. And he'll begin, he got some great things going on he's working on. You can stay tuned. You'll have some more information on that. Catch him on Wednesdays, up and coming. Excuse me. Then we also have our newest center here, the Crowley Center of the Society of Knowledge, and that is presided over by Messenger Frank Othello Andrews Jr. Again, he's doing great work as well. We look forward to continuing to build with all of our messengers, all of our other members. Again, we just look forward to building with everybody, with all of you out there, as we continue to deliver this message that God is Almighty. And again, thank you all for joining us today. Catch y'all next time. Peace. Be light.